Ismail Badjie. I'm the founder and CEO at Innovarx Global Health, but also a recently licensed pharmacist here in the Gambia. To just give you guys context, obviously I'm Gambian, born and raised, but I've spent the past over 10 years in the US working as a pharmacist, dealing with procurements, working at one of the biggest community pharmacies in the USA, Walgreens. And being that obviously my institution as well too does bring in medications that falls under the category of, I guess, as the honorable members mentioned, medications from Europe or the USA, I just felt like it would be remiss if I didn't provide a little bit of context on as to why. And I think part of the conversation that's been missing has been, why Gambia? Why Africa? Yes, the medications came from India. I could tell you that India produces 50% of the medications in the United States. Almost half of the medications that I dispense as a pharmacist in the USA were made in India. So the conversation should not be about if something is less than, when India has a nickname, they call them the world's pharmacy, because they supply a lot of medications to the rest of the world. But these markets, which are a little bit more sophisticated from a supply chain standpoint, exist as marketplaces, meaning the idea of a local importer in Africa having to even provide certificates of analysis and register product is an outdated concept in pharmacy supply chain. And it's one of the reasons why Africa as a continent is struggling with a counterfeit problem, because the people who are quality distributors of medications consider our regulations too draconian, where they'll rather take their business elsewhere. And this is something I know for a fact because I've lived it now on both ends, both as a Gambian stakeholder, but also as a US practitioner who understands the drug supply chain. Even the idea of testing, there's no place in a structured society that you are required to test every single product that comes into the country. Doing it is actually causing harm to the Gambian people, because the rate that we're going, there will be a drug shortage in the very near future. And we talk about the unfortunate nature of kids who die. That should never happen in any country. But more Gambians will die because essential medications are not available in the country. Now, as stakeholders, I'll speak to all of us. I think all of us have a responsibility to vet where we buy medications from. So in terms of consequences, we would expect our regulators to hold us accountable for vetting where we buy medications from. Every single importer makes a decision on where you want to buy medications from. Some of us pay more, some of us pay less. I think that's a separate conversation that internally we could have. But I think the idea of testing is something that we should not even encourage as a standard, because that will be taking the profession back and not forward. Now, when it comes to randomized testing, I think that's something we can consider, where an institution is established, where if you are an importer of medication and you have an establishment, the government authorities can always randomly select any sample that you're providing to the public, at which point, if you are found to have a substandard product in the market, we could be held responsible, because us as stakeholders would not want you amongst us if your due diligence is not done properly. But the $1,000 it's a precedence that it should not even be considered, because it doesn't solve the problem. Because another reality is we live in a very porous country, meaning the individuals around this table that are responsible for following procedure of bringing in medications. Every single day, there are other people who are not in this room who are selling medications to Gambians. And they will dominate the market. So it is just my hope that you guys consider how it should be. The idea of dossier is outdated, because as he mentioned, none of us are bringing in a value that requires a one-on-one relationship with a manufacturing company. But I think as a Gambian nation, we could also start demanding that some of these manufacturers, if your products are not good enough to sell to Western nations, it should not be good enough to sell to Gambian people. And that's not only with medications, that should go with food. That's the root of the problem, because if you look at the manufacturer who made these products, yes, I don't think any pharmacist who takes the oath as a pharmacist intends to cause harm. But at the same time, too, we should question the level of manufacturers that have access to our market. I have personally studied the Indian market very closely to know that there's 3 tiers to the Indian market. The top tier that supplies USA and Europe. The middle tier that they consume internally. And there's the bottom tier that they could always produce a document. So for the honorable member who asked about a certificate of dossier, that's one of the easiest documents to produce. Because if I am in the counterfeit business, I could take the correct medication, send it to a lab to get tested, it will pass, and I will use the same document to now knock on African nations that are more vulnerable and proliferate medications that are substandard, which is why the counterfeit industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry in Africa. And almost 50% of the counterfeit medications around the world are found in sub-Saharan Africa. Yes, there's some in the USA, but it's less likely. Because of the FDA, they have regulations in place. So as a business that buys medications, I don't have a relationship with a manufacturer one-on-one. I buy from a marketplace, which I'm sure a lot of my shareholders, they buy from the UK market. It's a marketplace. So it also does not make sense. We're doing more harm to Gambian people if some importers are trying to bring quality medications in the Gambia, but it's harder for people that need it the most just to bring it in the Gambia. So it's just my hope that whatever happens, this tragedy, as big as it is a tragedy, let's not overreact and actually cause more harm in the long term. And I think internally, us as stakeholders have the responsibility to each other to police each other better, leverage each other better, buy consolidated resources to buy together. That's the only way we solve our problem. But I just know this precedence of testing does not exist in any society that actually needs medications the right way. And I will make myself and my resources available to any stakeholders because I know and understand Western drug supply chains. And it's just my hope that we take that into consideration because the Gambia cannot afford what the status quo is today. And the problems will manifest 3 months from now, 6 months from now, when it will come back to the same issue. I yield the floor. Thank you.